Hi, I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where purpose-driven people like you learn how to craft and tell compelling stories to grow your revenue and amplify your impact. If you would like to clarify your story in under 30 minutes, visit me at businessofstory.com, because you gotta own your story to grow your brand.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Sitting right at the top of the mountain as the grand master of all brand storytelling is probably Red Bull and its publishing group, Red Bull Media House. True to its daredevil ethos of giving you wings, Red Bull continues to push the envelope with its content creation and distribution. They just released the first ever stereoscopic 360 first-person virtual reality music video featuring New Zealand pop star Villette singing her new single, Money.
Picture me dancing, all eyes on me. Picture me rolling, I have no time now. Give me the truth, cause it's not okay to pretend that you're here now. I've been here dancing, I've been here.
What is so cutting edge about this music video is that you, as the viewer, star in the lead role as the seductress Villette has her way with you, or at least your mind, in this virtual reality romp. Typical VR is shot on a stationary camera so you can look around the production in a somewhat flat 360-degree way. In Red Bull's Money VR music video, you get the 360 view, but with a three-dimensional stereoscopic experience. Think of it like you're in a spherical bubble that has deep dimension everywhere you look. Now add to that the camera. It's not stationary, but it moves through the scene, placing you as the first-person viewer at the center of the story as Villette coos her way through your psyche in this 4-minute experience. Well, on today's show, we have the director of Money, Parker Howell, a guy you have no doubt heard me reference many times on the Business of Story because, well, he's our son. And yep, I'm a pretty proud papa for what he's accomplished with this Red Bull piece. Parker takes us by the hand on his journey of landing the Red Bull project and then tapping into his maker mindset to invent new VR camera technology to shoot in first person and how he had to hack editing software to create this virtual boundary-breaking music video. Plus, we have a bonus feature at the end of this podcast. Parker will walk you through the video real time as you watch it, and he'll describe what went into conceiving, directing, shooting, and editing each scene, right down to managing the snake handler. Yep, you gotta have snakes. Anyways, you'll get the insider play-by-play as you watch the video. So, let's get started right now with Parker Howell, director of Red Bull's latest virtual reality experience, on this edition of the Business of Story. Wow, exciting time in your life, Parker. Welcome to Business of Story.
Hey, Dad. Great to be here finally.
And I guess it's not exciting so much that you're on Business of Story for you, but to be able to break out in the virtual reality stereoscopic directing world like you have with Red Bull is pretty cool.
Yeah. It's been just a whirlwind journey, over the past year and a half. I've been just exploring the space of virtual reality. Before that, I've been out in Hollywood for the past 7 years, doing independent film and TV and concert visuals and all that. And I just saw a really fresh, exciting new media. And it's not very often that a new media comes into play. So I realized that a lot of the skills that I had developed over these past few years really lent themselves to this new emerging mediascape. And so I've just been diving in and exploring it. It's been fascinating.
Well, and you graduated from Chapman University in 2010, and you were in film production, so always wanted to be a director. You wanted to be a director since you were a young man. And of course, Mom and I are sitting over here in Phoenix like, oh my God, being a director in Hollywood's a little bit like being a starting quarterback in the NFL. It's hard to break in, but when you do, boy, it's pretty good. So you found, though, a niche that really plays to your strengths. And I can say that from seeing you grow up, from your creativity and storytelling to your mathematical mind and how you are bringing that into the fold, and to what you have told me so many times, that virtual reality is the next big new thing in Hollywood and nobody really quite yet has it figured out. So it's kind of like these three worlds have come together for you and you find yourself right in the epicenter of it, trying to figure out what's next.
Yeah. Like you said, the math, the technology, the storytelling, the cinematic language. And I'd say even as well as like my explorations in the circus world out here and that kind of live theater, all of those things have paid off and have helped me kind of inform myself about virtual reality.
Now explain your circus world life so people know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. So one of the first few things I did when we got out to Los Angeles was met up with a bunch of fire spinners. We were doing a spec television pilot called The Party People. And Will Walsh and I had met up with Teddy Saunders, who was one of our party hosts. And I said to Teddy, hey, so what kind of party scenes do you know out here? He's like, well, I know all these fire spinners. And I was like, oh, great. Let's meet them for the show. And as we met these people and we met this wild world of all these different circus performers and fire spinners and acrobats and aerialists, we decided that we were like, all right, well, we want to keep exploring this and we want to do it from performing with them. And so, within a very few short months, we learned how to spin fire and we went to Burning Man. And next thing you know, we were in the fire circus, traveling the world as fire performers and getting a sense of, the world as a circus performer.
Well, one of your big, I guess, debut hits in the film world with you and Teddy Saunders and Will Walsh, who, by the way, has been a buddy of yours since high school at Arcadia High out here in Phoenix, Arizona. The same high school, by the way, that produced Spielberg. Had to throw that out for our listeners. You guys created a pretty amazing film from Burning Man in 2011 before a lot of films were coming out of Burning Man. And I would look back and say, man, it seemed like that was kind of the catalyst for so many people to follow on in 2012 and after with their own versions of film at Burning Man. And that was what was the name of your film?
That was Oh, the Places You'll Go at Burning Man. It was based off of Dr. Seuss's last book that he wrote on his deathbed, which takes you through kind of a whimsical journey of all the twists and turns life has for you.
And I'm just pulling it up right now. Do you know how many views it's had since you launched it? I know it's in the millions.
I don't know. It's maybe approaching 4 million, I guess.
It has really taken off. Here it is. It's coming up. If you haven't seen it, folks, it's really worth checking out. 3.5 million views. And it's really fun because you guys captured Burning Man in such an interesting way. And you also see your motion design skills up top in it and built it out. But was it that really first gave you that taste of what can happen when you communicate well a story in film?
Yeah, that was super exciting. I mean, I've done some big things that have been seen by a lot of people, but to have a piece that goes viral on the internet and you get to watch it kind of piece by piece and track it as it's taking off and traveling through Reddit and Huffington Post and like seeing the effect of it and seeing people reach out and having the founder of Burning Man talk about it in his blog. And it's just like to see something organically grow digitally is really a wild and fascinating experience. And I mean, yeah, Burning Man is something that is, if it calls to you, it is a absolutely life-changing experience. And so that was our first burn. And Burning Man changed us, and I think we changed Burning Man a little bit.
Well, definitely on some of the follow-on films that came after that. Now, one of the things too about that particular piece, from my standpoint, again, is your watching your career grow, that it did bring in both storytelling, some really beautiful video, film and animation, motion design work. You then went on, did a lot of work with Dancing with the Stars, and you did, I remember, the Revolution video, motion design for CBS's 50th anniversary of the Beatles on. And I remember Mom and I being very proud of watching that play on TV and sending you a note and saying, "Oh, Parker, this is so cool to see your work on the 50th anniversary Beatles show on CBS." And I think your response to me was, "Yeah, well, they were kind of your band." But what I could see was this career building. And now it came together a couple of years ago, a year and a half ago. Tell us about how you finally dove into virtual reality filmmaking and realized that this might really be a niche for you.
In exploring all of these different, forms of creativity and, as some would say, like authoring the ideas behind these concert visuals or short films or whatever, you kind of have to start exploring muses, and you have to start exploring ways of like calling in this creativity. I was really excited. I got a job working for Excision. Excision is this big dubstep DJ producer who makes the most spectacular dubstep post-apocalyptic show where his whole stage is an LED array. So his DJ booth is LEDs, screen in front, and then he's got a big screen of LEDs behind him. And his entire show, he's basically riding in these different robotic vehicles that are blasting lasers, and it's just an absolute wild experience to behold. And ever since I had considered working inside of concert visuals, I'd always wanted to do some big time, crazy dubstep rave visuals. And so I'd had the chance to be working with him. And so in coming up with the idea for this piece that I made, I was doing a lot of guided meditation and visualization. And in doing so, I came up with this piece where he starts off in this wild temple out in the middle of nowhere, and the temple kind of breaks apart and turns into the spaceship, and he flies up into the cosmos and starts shooting lasers at you. And as I was going through this process and doing all of this visualization, I realized that I wanted the lighting programmer to program all the robotic lights that are around the screen to be working in tandem with my lasers that I had projected on the screen. And I was just kind of struggling to get his lasers to be exactly what I wanted them to be. At the same time, I'd just started doing motion design for a YouTube Red series for MatPats, Global Gamers. And I had just started building these like 360 stereoscopic digital rigs for making these visuals. And I was just thinking about that whole experience and how wild it looks inside the headset and how you have all this total control. And it dawned on me in that moment, if I can work inside of virtual reality, then I can take all of these visuals that I've been doing in the concert world that are projection mapped on flat screens, which give the illusion of three-dimensionality. But inside of virtual reality, all of that dimensionality can really exist, and I can really create visuals for people unlike anything they've ever experienced before. So that was my first like aha moment. And at that moment, I got up from my meditation. I called up Will Walsh and I said, "Will, we got to get into virtual reality." He's like, "I agree. Let's do it." And I said, "Okay, we got to find ourselves a camera first and foremost." So we said, "All right, let's meet in 2 days. We'll do our research. We'll find a camera." And I started looking on the internet right away, and the camera that we had used for the YouTube Red piece was a crazy 18 GoPro rig that did shoot stereoscopic VR, which was super fresh at the time. But from where I was sitting, I was like, I don't want to shoot with 18 GoPros. That seems like a nightmare. I want to shoot with something that, like a filmmaker with just a classic camera, can pick up and play with and experiment with and learn from. And so in doing so, in doing my research, I felt like at the time there was like only one camera that could do it, and it wasn't even released yet. and it was this Views camera. And so I sent them an email right away on their contact page for collaboration. And I just outlined everything that I had just gone through about creating these visuals, taking live action footage and merging it with computer generated visuals and stereoscopic. And it was just the wildest thing, because once I took that first step into the virtual reality world, all of the doors just kept opening. And Jim Malcolm, their general manager at Views, he emailed me back the next day and he said, I'm actually going to be in downtown Los Angeles tomorrow. Do you want to come by and I'll teach you how to use the camera? So I grabbed my friend Adam Michalak, who's an amazing audio engineer. He did all the score engineering for the past few Star Wars films. And I said, hey, come on out, because he was a little bit interested in the virtual reality world from the audio perspective. And so we all went out and met up with Jim out in downtown Los Angeles, and he showed us the camera. And I got to tell you, I was just blown away by the simplicity and the power of what they had created. And it was just amazing. And
at Parker, is it safe to say that Views camera is kind of like the GoPro of VR or 360 shooting, that it was designed very much with the consumer in mind to make it easy for people like me just to go out and capture this?
Yeah. So it's funny calling something the GoPro, because GoPros are so prevalent inside the VR space, but what it is like you said, it's the simple, it's all in one. It's not a big array. It's not a big thing you're putting together, and it's an end-to-end solution. So the camera itself comes with its own stitching software, which they just keep improving and making better. And it's, I won't bore the listeners with what it takes to stitch virtual reality, especially stereoscopic 360, but it takes some pretty wild modern computing power in order to do it. And they've got it all. So yeah, what's beautiful about the Views cameras, it's all in one. It's got an on switch and a record switch. And unlike classic filmmaking, where you need to have the viewer to look through and say, okay, that's my shot framed up, you go, okay, well, if I just put my head where this camera is, that's virtual reality, because virtual reality is in every direction.
Okay, so let's get us all caught up here.
Okay, sorry.
There's a lot going on, but it's really fun. So you and Will Walsh grew up in making films. You both went to Chapman University, graduated, and you've been working. Now, Will's got a great company, Willpower Cinema, and he's made quite a name for himself in the Steadicam business. And that is, where you strap the camera to your body, and he does a lot of work around the world for concerts and that sort of thing in the Steadicam world. And you can learn more about Will at Willpower Cinema. But to me, it's interesting because what you did next with the Views camera to create first-person virtual reality, Will was there every step of the way with you, bringing in his Steadicam expertise of how do you make this work with a moving camera, but not make people sick in the process. And because you're not just shooting in one dimension, you're now shooting 360 and stereoscopic. So explain to us the difference between 360 and stereoscopic, and how do they come together?
From the get-go, it was important for me to get a virtual reality camera that was both 360 and stereoscopic, because I was thinking about how to make these 360 visuals that no one had ever seen before. I needed stereoscopic. Now, stereoscopic, break the word down, stereo to scopic, eyes. Stereoscopic is recording your image for each eye. So
it's like 3D, like what we see when we go and watch a typical 3D movie.
Exactly, because the main part of your depth cues when you're looking at the world is because you have two eyes and you get a parallax, meaning a slight difference in where the objects are oriented between the two eyes. And then your brain does all the calculations to say, oh, that's 5 feet away. That's 10 feet away.
Yeah. But in the virtual reality world, is it safe for me to say, because I'm still learning as I'm doing this myself, that it's typically 360, which means it's a stationary camera and you can look and turn in 360. But even that is sort of one dimensional as you see it, because you're not getting 3 dimensions in every bit of that 360 perspective. Is that fair to say?
Yes. So virtual reality really started in monoscopic 360, which was to say that you get to look in every direction, but you're not getting any depth cues because each eye is getting fed the same image. So everything kind of exists, imagine, inside of a flat sphere. Now with stereoscopic, that same information exists, except each eye gets its own sphere of information, which then gives you the parallax, which then gives you the dimensionality.
Okay, and so when I'm watching before, when I would watch your VR films like Confucius that led up to Red Bull, is I was watching it on my sort of makeshift headset with my iPhone in there, and I'm watching it, but I'm not getting stereoscopic. I'm getting flat 360. I can look all around, but I'm not getting the dimension on it.
No, incorrect. That was also stereoscopic 360.
It was, but I could only see it in regular 360.
No, you could see it in stereoscopic.
I mean, through my iPhone.
Through your iPhone. No, the iPhone, whatever the VR player you were pulling off was working with stereoscopic 360.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'll just chalk it up to bad eyes at 57 years old. But then when you came out with the Red Bull piece that just came out, you said, Dad, all right, spend the money, get your Oculus Go, which I did. And it just blew me away. The Oculus, when you put that on, you literally feel like you are in the dimension of the film looking all around, but you're getting such unbelievable depth to it. It really, you got to kind of sometimes sit down, or you find yourself walking or moving around. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah. Like you said, I think a lot of that is just having the nicer technology. It's been amazing to me what we can do with these little cardboards, with these little phone mounted rigs. It's very ingenious but ultimately it's not the same as a headset that's just designed and dialed in for VR,
So you guys got the Views camera. You talked yourself out of one, I think, or talked yourself into one. They gave you one and you went out and shot a spec piece for Adidas, put it together, showed the Views folks what you could do with it. And then they brought you on to create a demo film for them, I guess, for a launch in Germany about a year and a half ago.
Yeah. So where virtual reality was really at that time was, it's living in the world of the engineers, and the artisans hadn't really picked it up yet because people had just gotten the technology to a place where it's like, okay, now we're able to create something cool. And then, it takes a little bit of time between, okay, we can do it, for the artists to come in and storytellers to say, okay, now how do we do this? How do we work and create a new grammar inside this new media?
And you're right in the middle of doing that. I mean, you're talking like this technology just came out within the last, 2 years. And even with the work you did on Red Bull, you guys were having to hack and work through some new beta software in order to bring that whole piece together.
Yes, we're very much in the business of building our own tools as we go to make these things happen. It's the only way. You're working with new software that's untested. You're always just trying to figure out what's coming out and figure out new solutions. And a lot of stuff you'll go in and you'll do by hand on a computer, and you'll figure out a process that works. And once you realize it works, you get a coder to come in and make that process automated so that you can take, the time down and make the stuff happen in a reasonable amount of time.
So about this time last year, then, you were working with the Views camera, having some fun creating that spec piece for Adidas. Then they came to you and tell us about your first, adventure then into first person virtual reality, because it's not enough just to be in the 360 world. Then you add on that the stereoscopic 3 dimensions, but now you're asking the technology, this brand new technology, to be able to strap to someone's head and actually walk you through a scene. So you're moving right along with the actor. How did you guys come about that? How did you build the rig, and what did it lead to with that first production?
Yeah. So the biggest part about virtual reality that it's hard for people to understand until they've actually been inside of it is the perspective. Before you go into virtual reality, or maybe if your only experience with it is watching, scrolling around a YouTube video that's 360, is you're like, okay, this is just a video that I have this weird ability to scroll around. But once you start going inside the headset, you realize, no, this is a world that's been created that, unlike a film is like a window that you're looking through a window at something happening. You, inside virtual reality, are placed inside of a world. And so to go in and create a perspective where you are a character inside that world, we found to be one of the most dramatic ways to bring a sense of agency, to bring a sense of perspective that classic filmmaking just really doesn't touch very often. It doesn't touch very well, relatively speaking. When views came to us, they wanted a piece that would show off what you can do storytelling wise in VR. And that was a way that we thought, okay, we can tell a story that hasn't been told before, and we can take advantage of this medium in a way that you couldn't do with classical filmmaking. And so from there, I just got to write a really fun story.
And the premise of that story was a person kind of lost themselves in video gaming and virtual reality, which may be coming up against their actual reality. And so you had an overall message in that piece of what?
All right. Well, maybe let's rewind a little bit.
All right.
So the virtual reality experience is Confucius VR, and it takes place in a near future where augmented reality, just to keep everything confusing, it's a simulated version of an augmented reality where basically you have this kung fu sensei who is, you put on these goggles, and this kung fu sensei is now projected into your life, and he begins to gamify your life, and he helps you level up by eating better and training, all under the guise of you're going to have to fight these kung fu ninjas that come into your life. And you start off the film with this process of installing these haptic electrodes into your body. And then in the post-end, we went in and we designed the piece for this thing called a sub pack, which is a subwoofer system that you wear. And in this case, you wear it on your chest. And so as these animated or ninjas are coming into the world and fighting you, inside the sub pack, inside the audio spectrum, which is feeding the sub pack, is all the information. So whenever you get hit by a ninja, you're feeling it in this rumble in your chest. And it turned out to be a really cool extrasensory experience to give another dimension to the virtual reality.
So you rolled this out. They were at a trade show in Germany or something like that, as I recall, in September. And then you came back and showed this at a VR film festival in LA and ended up winning the Grand Prix award there. Yeah.
It was the Awareness Film Festival out in LA, and they were showing all sorts of different projects and VR pieces, and the whole festival was really about raising consciousness. And even though the piece Confucius is probably at first a comedy adventure, the underlying tone is a story about how man is going to merge with technology and how man can find his higher self through this technology, and just trying to help people stay on that elevated path, because it also deals with this technology is something that you can get lost in, and trying to be responsible with this and letting this new medium enhance your life and not just be something that you escape your life in.
Yeah. And this is when you created the helmet cam, so that your first person, by the way, folks, I'll have a link to this video and the others within the show notes, so you can, watch them too, but you hearing from the director and what actually went into the creation of it. So you and Will put together your first helmet cam using the Views camera to make this one work.
Yeah. So the helmet cam in this case, I remember Will had made a really cool helmet camera for a DSLR camera for a film he did at Burning Man a few years back. That was a first person experience at Burning Man, which turned out really, really cool. And I called him up and I said, "Hey man, can we get that helmet out of storage? Let's see what we can't do in the VR space." So we used his helmet cam. We also went through several iterations of doing a snorri cam, which is like a chest mounted camera. But ultimately we found that we could get the most stable image by controlling the motion through the head.
So you did that. What did you learn in the creating of Confucius that worked and didn't work that you built upon for the Red Bull piece?
One of the core principles that has to be addressed with all this, and what freaks all the, quote unquote experts out as we start to do this first person work, is inside of virtual reality, you have to make a certain level of stability in order for it to be digestible. And if the helmet camera is moving around too much in a way that the human who is wearing the goggles is not moving around, then it'll create a certain kind of motion sickness. Basically, the inner ear will be telling the body, hey, you're not moving around, but your eyes will be saying that you're moving around. And that disconnection will make it impossible to view the VR. So a lot of what we were learning inside of making Confucius was what motion we can get away with, and basically some ideas about how the human brain works with regards to visual stimulus. For instance, the human brain inside of VR, we see it going two different directions. There's two different routes for visually perceiving the world. One route is exploratory, where you want to look around and you're looking around the scene and your brain's searching for information and meaning. And the other part is a focused kind of vision. And we found that if you can keep the audience focused, then you can actually get more emotion out of the camera, because as these ninjas are coming at you in virtual space, they're throwing kicks and punches and everything, but your brain is so focused on these incoming hands that are coming at you, which is also another reason why the stereoscopic is so important. So you're getting this real 3D parallax of these hands that are coming at your face. As your brain is locking onto that image, it doesn't worry so much about the motion, because your brain's trying to protect itself. However, if you set up a scene where you're looking around the world and it starts to shift, then your brain starts to become uncomfortable.
Yeah, so you are working in 3D and you're working in 360, but I guess it's important as a director to remember that the brain is still going to stay pretty much trained on what's happening in front of them. We may look around for the novelty of the ability to do it, as well as the brain continuing to sort of scan our environment. But it's not like you're spinning around the whole time watching it. You are still watching what's happening in front of you. So as a digital storyteller, as a filmmaker storyteller, you have to be very cognizant of not only the construct or the structure of the story, but what's happening now in this three-dimensional world of your audience.
Yeah, and that's another thing we found from Confucius, is creating a rhythm as the filmmaker to dictate for the audience which of these two states of mind they're going to go through. And if you think about it and you were to do just a little a mind experiment and say to yourself, how much of the time am I looking around the world searching for information and meaning? And how much of the time am I focused on something that's straight ahead of me that I'm dealing with? You'd probably realize that most of the time you're looking straight ahead. You're generally focused on something. Every now and then you're crossing the street and you're looking around to make sure there's no traffic coming. And so all of our cinematography and our editing was designed so that you would start a scene in like a static, very still shot that invited the viewer to look around and explore the world. And once they do that, and then we bring the action back to the front of the frame, so that the brain's kind of filling in all the details around them. They get the information early on, and then they don't really need to go and look around that room or that park again, because there's action in front of them, but their brain knows it's all there. So it's interesting. A lot of early virtual reality pieces, because it was 360 and not 3D, they thought that what you need to do is you just need to make action in all directions around the camera at all times, so that the person can look in any direction and be entertained. But ultimately, that's not fulfilling for people to experience. People want to be guided. They want to know where to look. If they're spending their entire experience in VR wandering around, not knowing what to look at, it actually becomes very uncomfortable. So I think that's one of the early lessons in VR cinematography, is to really be conscious of the amount of time and conscious of where you want the audience's focus to be, so that you can direct them and guide them on that journey.
Yeah, so don't let the technology overtake the storytelling. You got to really be very much of a storyteller. Don't let the technology be a gimmick within that story, but just use it to help accentuate and amplify the story you're trying to tell.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you get this done. You get some good recognition for it. And I mean, not a month or two later, all of a sudden Red Bull shows up, and now you've got a chance to work with one of the best, if maybe not the best, brand storyteller in all the world. I mean, Red Bull has been producing amazing content for years and years now. In fact, most people, a lot of brands try to follow in their footsteps when they can. How did that opportunity come around? And, how were you ready to leap into it?
Yeah, so it was great, actually. It was a connection back from Chapman University. Doug Riggs had built a company with Caspar called Baron VR, and they've been doing a whole bunch of different commercial production work, but also doing lots of virtual reality work. And they've just been in contact with the Red Bull team. And so when Red Bull has a new virtual reality project, Baron VR gets a chance to pitch it, and they came out with this cool, wild, dark music video. And I had met with the Baron people maybe a few weeks before, and showed them Confucius, and they just loved Confucius. And so, they just knew that it was just a really good vibe, a good fit. And so we got to go in and pitch creative on it and pitch the proposal. And I really pitched them on the idea that, this experience should be a first person experience. It should give that people that perspective of you're inside of a person, inside of a dream. And they loved it. And they said, all right, let's do it. And then boom, we were off to the races. We had to figure out how to do all these things we said we were going to do.
So did you create a different kind of helmet cam for this? Because I don't think you used the Views camera in this particular project. It was like much bigger and much more intense. So you had to use a little bit more expensive technology.
So what happened with the Views system we created is we made the piece, and then the way that the Views camera sits in front of the face, we had to go back in post-production and cover my face with some cool motion graphic technical pieces
you're talking about the Confucius video before this, right?
Yeah, so the Confucius piece. So ultimately you ended up getting 270 degree view with 90 degrees in the back that was covered with some motion design. And so for the Red Bull piece, we said, all right, we're going to push this, and we're going to do a full 360 degree camera. And we're also going to go shoot some stuff in a real dark, moody, concert lit environment. And in order to do that, we needed a camera that we could really push to the extreme. And so we ended up going with a rig that we built with a Kandao Obsidian, which had also just come out at the time. And we built that as the main brain of the VR rig, and then attached 3 more GoPro super wide angle cameras onto that camera rig, so that we could use that information to go and fill in and erase the head out and give you a full 360 degree experience while still being connected to a human body, which, originally what happened is we went around and we started talking to some of these other virtual reality production companies that had specialized and built their own camera rigs. And we told them what we wanted to do. We told them how the piece worked and the flow of it. And they looked at us and they said it was impossible to do. And I said, well, I'm pretty sure it's possible. So, me, my cinematographer, Stefan, and Will all set about to build this camera. And we went through a bunch of series of building and constructions and different iterations. And ultimately we came up with the camera that did everything we wanted to do. And we pushed it to the absolute extreme of what we could do. And we found amazing software that allowed us to go and shoot this really moody, dark scene, which, was near impossible to shoot.
Well, and I guess to be fair, it's not a camera, but a series of cameras. Is that right? That are strapped to this helmet rig. So it's like you develop this first person camera helmet rig using these different devices?
Yeah. So it's funny because the first project I worked on was 18 GoPros. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to work with all in one system. And so we went with the Views camera. But then when I realized, okay, if you want to be at the cutting edge, you gotta build your own rig. If you want to do all these things that no one knows how to do, you got to build a special camera rig to do it. So yeah, ultimately it ended up being a 9 lens system
on a baseball batting helmet.
on a baseball batting helmet. Yeah, if you got some images you can attach to it, it's a pretty wild looking rig. It's pretty.
We'll have a picture of it in the show notes too, if you'll free that up, unless it's still patent pending. I don't know, but it's a great maker type contraption you've made, and I got to believe that some of the experience you had at Burning Man in that art world out there probably helps influence and inform how you guys created this particular unit.
Sure. Yeah. That's something that people forget about Burning Man. People think Burning Man's just a bunch of freaks in costumes, but the creative potential of people at Burning Man, the engineering, the creativity, Elon Musk is our number one creative burner right now, sending cars into space and getting us ready to go to Mars. That's the ethos of that place. So yeah, it's really just a can-do attitude that you bring to it. It's like, yeah, if you know that there's a way, then just have the chutzpah to go out and make it.
All right. So now in your story, we're in the first week of January this year, as I recall. And you had one night to film this entire program. Villette, tell us a little bit about the star of this particular music video. And what is it why is she such a star with Red Bull that you know of?
Yeah, well, Villette's amazing. Her song "Money," which we did the piece for, was a very interesting, sexy, dramatic, haunting song, and that's really where we started with the creative. Is just listening to the song, and she's talking to you, and it's has this ambiguity about it of, is she coming on to you? Is she trapping you? How does this all work? And it brings up all these kind of questions about the relationship between money and sexuality and lust and love and desire, and the certain feeling of confusion and ambiguity that it brings to it really gave me this feeling of like, oh, you've lost control. Villette is the one who is holding all the cards in this piece. So that kind of core emotion is what we wanted to bring to the virtual reality experience.
And is this something that you had experienced in your past that somehow informed how you told this story?
Yeah. So again, creatively going back, I went back to some guided meditation and visualization and was searching through kind of past experiences, looking for that feeling in my own life of what is it like to feel out of control. And it's kind of embarrassing to say, but I went back to like junior high, like a breakup with a ex-girlfriend. And I remember after the breakup that night, just like tossing and turning in bed all night, going through these like feelings of, oh, I'll never experience this again. And what's she thinking? What's going on? And going through these kind of wild, like fever dreams, experiencing this feeling of lack of control and confusion and love and lust and all these wild feelings that you have as a teenager. And that kind of became the core creative for the piece is okay, what if, don't think about this as a film, but think about what we're creating as teleporting someone into someone else's dream. And so that really became the cornerstone bit of creative is there's going to be this guy and you're going to be the guy and you're going to fall asleep and you're going to drift into this dream state where this ex-girlfriend is there and you're going to go through all these feelings of love and lust and terror and confusion and you're going to go on this journey. And then by the end, we're going to wake you up and let you try and say to yourself, what the hell did that mean?
What the hell was that? So you actually, in your guided meditation, went into your own virtual reality to find something that you experienced in the past to create the story or help inform the story that you are creating now in this new made-up world that you are trying to get people, when they are watching it and experiencing it, to pretty much divorce themselves from their own reality and fall headlong into this music video. And maybe for the very first time, I guess for the very first time for Red Bull, the first stereoscopic 360 first person virtual reality music video that places you literally at the center of the stage.
Yeah, that's correct.
It's kind of mind blowing. So, this being so pioneering, good thing I guess you had a chance to work with Red Bull on it, because they're always about pushing the envelope. Did they ever push back saying, "Are you sure you can pull this off? Are you sure?" I mean, they were spending a lot of money, investing a lot of money into something that had never been done before.
The team at Red Bull was just amazing through the whole process. They definitely had times where they were asking and double checking, and they had, Joe Robbins over there making sure, he's their head of VR, and just making sure that we were, dotting all our I's and crossing all our T's. But once we got going, the whole thing just made sense to me, and the whole logic of it and what we had to do, it just all, unfolded. And as I was able to explain it to the guys, they're going, okay, cool. Well, this is what we do. This is what Red Bull does. Red Bull does what has never been done before. And so, yeah, the whole team, Marcus and Camera from Red Bull Music, they put their faith in us, and they said, let's do it. Let's make it happen. It's great.
So you got into it. You had a good flow. You had a great crew around you. You found a really cool location to shoot in downtown LA. You had to shoot over the evening. I imagine that would be for budget purposes, but you didn't really have any room for error. You had a lot of moving parts. And by the way, Red Bull did a nice little 3-minute behind the scenes video. So for you listeners, if you want to see some of that went into the creation of it, you can see that as well. But Parker, take us to a time when you went, uh-oh, we might have a problem here.
Yeah. So let's see. We get on set. So how we had it set up is we shot at night because we wanted to be able to control all the lighting in this building. So all of the external light that's coming in through the windows is all our lights, which is pretty standard film practice. And we started off with the mirror scene, and the mirror scene, everything flowed great. We went into the club scene with all the crazy moving lights and the intense choreography, and it's the big oneer, and that all went off great. And let's see, we're switching through the series, and at some point we've got the camera mounted to the ceiling, and we go through and we shoot this whole series of Danny with the snake all from the ceiling. We've got Danny G, our Cirque du Soleil performer, actor, cameraman, first person performer. We've got him falling from the ceiling into bed so we can create this really dynamic shot. And we go through this whole series. And our DIT, which is the guy who's in charge of ingesting all of the data as you go through the process. We've got 9 different cards of data that are going through, and he's checking everything. He tells us that one of the lenses of the camera has gone haywire. And so basically the left eye of what we shot from the ceiling piece, it won't work. And we'd had another issue with the other camera where another card had gone haywire. And for a bit of a moment in the middle of the film, our 2 VR cameras looked like neither one of them was working with what we needed to do. So it was a little bit of a wild scramble as we're calling around looking for a replacement virtual reality camera. And the closest one was in Austin, Texas. So we were able to go in and track down the problem with the card file. The camera that had a lens error, that one got completely scrapped. We got the other camera back online, and, we talked with the executives over at Red Bull, and we said, hey, listen, we either move on with where we're at on the shot, or, we extend the timeline of today's shoot a little bit longer, and we go back and we get that cool overhead footage. And they said, yeah, we love the shot. We think it has to be done. So they gave us the go ahead to go back, reshoot it, and, spend another couple hours to make sure that we got everything we can. And then once we did that, we were back online, and we really moved very fast, and we shot a lot of things in virtual reality. And, it was really epic, fun shoot.
And when you went into post-production and editing and adding the dimensional motion design and so forth, what kind of challenges did you come up against? Because I would imagine, or as you have told me, that some of this technology still was in such beta form that it couldn't do some of the things that you wanted it to do. So you guys had to write your own hacks.
Yeah, it's almost difficult to put into words that it's going to make any sense about what kind of challenges come into the post-production side of working with this stereoscopic spherical footage. But a lot of what's just going on is you just have to keep your ear to all the new technology as it's coming out, because as soon as a new piece comes out, it's fixing something that you knew was going to be fixed. You knew that someone was going to come up with a solution. You just don't know when that solution is going to come up. And so you're just always paying attention. And there was some new technology that came out during this process that just really made our lives a lot sweeter. And then again, the other thing that has to happen is all visuals, all visual effects that you're working, they have to work for both eyes. And so we had to build a whole technique, which basically went in and took each eye, stripped them apart, allowed you to make modifications to one image, and then would go back in and make all those modifications in the same physical location on the other image, and then recombine those images to give you, again, your final stereoscopic image. And it was a lot of work and took a lot of time and ingenuity, but by the time we were said and done, we're like, wow, this whole process, we now have tools that no one has. So it's very exciting.
And I recall a conversation you and I had not too long ago where it came down to the 11th hour and you were still having some challenges with some editing software, and you found a rogue hacker out there in the interwebs, and he spent the weekend creating a workaround for you.
Yeah. Basically, again, it's a little bit tricky to explain, but a lot of the stitching software for virtual reality has really been taking off. And we were using a piece called Mystica VR. And inside that software, it had some really powerful stabilization, which is really important when you're doing head-mounted cameras, create a stabilized image so that it's, again, easy to be digested. But the problem is it would stitch our main camera brain and it would stabilize it all. And the data that was stabilizing it, we needed to get that stabilization data into our compositing software so that we could take the other cameras, the GoPros, and have them all stabilized with the same mathematics. And it was possible to go in and do that by hand. It would only take, 2 months of, manually typing that in. But we found a programmer that was able to go in and write us some code to ingest that stabilization software so that we could get the entire piece stabilized together. And once we did that, I was just like, wow, we did this impossible shot, this shot that everyone was shaking their heads when I was telling them we were going to do. I said, no, we're going to do it. And so it just took that last hacker to give us the final piece of the puzzle to make it all work.
So you got it all put together. The more you tell me about this, the more I keep thinking in stereoscopic 3D that you have to become an incredibly dimensional storyteller to pull it off, because you have to first start with the story and actually have a story that makes sense and tell it. So without a good story structure, the rest of it's just sort of gimmick and looks nice, whatever. The mind's looking for that story. But then you've got to take into account as a director all the lighting and the shooting in this, not just 360 flat plane, but in this spherical 360, capturing all of that. Then add motion to it. So you're not just a lockdown camera like most people experience 360. You have an actor who has his helmet cam on walking through the scene so that your audience is experiencing the dimensional aspects of the scene. And then you go into the edit, and it's just not editing a linear progression of scenes together. You've got to not only do that, but then stitch together this 360 spherical world and make that all work. It's sort of mind-blowing.
Yeah, and one of the hardest parts that I haven't even talked about is at each place where the lenses change position, you have a stitch point. And so you have to have all of your blocking navigating all of these stitch points, because if something's too close and it exists in the stitch point, the parallax between these eyes will just totally chop your image into something funky and weird. Yeah, it's a game of storytelling and a game of math and chess, trying to just do the best you possibly can and get the best you can out of these tools while working inside of, these limitations. It's pretty wild.
Don't forget the experience as circus folk, too. You got to have a little circus folk in you to pull this off.
Yeah. And coming back to it, that's why we got Danny G to wear the helmet cam, because I said, I need a movement master to.
And he was from Cirque du Soleil, you said.
Yeah, he's out of this world.
So, Parker, here's what I want to do. You have covered so much, and I really appreciate your time. And I'm sure a lot of our brains are going, oh, what? Huh? Let's pull up the video. And this is the bonus feature I mentioned at the beginning of the show, folks. I'm going to play the video real time here. And Parker's going to play it, hopefully, real time on his end, because he's in Hollywood right now, and I'm in Phoenix. And Parker, what I would love for you to do is talk us through, from a director's standpoint, what we're looking at, maybe how you pulled some of this together. Give us the three-dimensional inside look of how you tackled this piece. And for those of you listening along, you could pause here, pull up the video, and you can watch along, and Parker's going to tell you what's happening as we go. And or later on, if you want to come back to the show, you can listen to it, put on your stereoscopic Oculus Go visor and watch along, but you'll hear from the director on how this all came together for Red Bull. So does that work for you, Parker?
Yeah, let's give it a go.
Let's see.
You give me a countdown as when you're going to press play.
Okay, it's up and running. Are you ready to go on your end?
All right, count me down.
Here we go. We've got Valette. Am I saying that right? Valette?
Mm-hmm.
Money, the official video 360 virtual reality from Red Bull in 5, 4, 3, 2.
So this first shot, we've got the VR camera on a dolly. And one of the crazy things about this shot is we had to go back in and erase the entire dolly shot from below. So if you look down, you just see the wood floor. But we had to go back in digitally and find software to do that. This shot was, again, the shot we had to go back and reshoot. Danny falling from the ceiling. This was our transition into the dream world. And I like bringing in the hands. And this is the first moment where you get to see yourself as Danny in the mirror. The introduction of Violette, there she is on the bed. Again, more dolly shots, more things where we had to go in and erase the floor out. Violette's coming towards you. She's this ghost, this apparition that's haunting you. And right in here, this is actually where a lot of the editing is a lot faster than people said was possible in virtual reality. Cutting between these different shots. And again, it's all about keeping the focus of the eye center frame. So you're always calculating where the eye is, and that allows you to travel through these different shots. In this shot, if you look up to the left, you'll see a key floating up in the attic. And we've gone through and hid some of those throughout the piece, which plays into the final symbolism and some of the final scenes. The snake was really fun to work with. I was amazed at the snake handler was able to get the snake to do what we wanted to do and crawl up Danny's leg. And I thought, man, this is ambitious, if nothing else, to have to go back in and add reptiles to this whole crazy production. This is, you got your hand out in front of Violette. Again, this is a big perspective that I was selling Red Bull on, as Violette looking into your eyes and giving people that feeling. It's a pretty wild feeling. Now we're into the fractal dimension. This is a part that we brought in an animator friend of mine, Michael Strauss, who creates these wild fractals outside of, they come from the complex dimension, a wild mathematical concept that you can only get to by taking the square root of a negative number, and all this wild fractal world comes out. So then this is really probably the most difficult shot of the whole piece. This is helmet cam. We've got Danny's hands first and foremost, and just the lighting of the scene to go between light and dark. It was nearly impossible. It took a bunch of well, it took a really great cinematographer, gaffer to get the lighting right. And we just pushed the camera to the utmost ends of what it could accomplish, and then had to do a lot of digital wizardry on the back end in order to make this image even viewable. But the final product I thought was really quite spectacular. And Violette's performance was really fun. We worked with a choreographer, Nina McNeely, on this piece to give her just something haunting and controlling and sexy. And just, I felt Violette really pulled it off, and just really gave you that cool vibe of, I'm not really sure what's going on here. I'm not sure if I'm in trouble or if I'm exactly where I want to be. And then, in our final scene here inside this fractal world, we're just opening up the imagery so that it encourages you to explore and look around, and as compared to the earlier parts of the film where it's highly cut, brings you back, and then you wake up from the dream. And as you wake up, you see Violette, and she just looks amazing. Again, we had, this is actually a wardrobe that Violette herself designed, some of this lingerie, and styled by Kamala Mathis. And then, this last image of her dissolving away in front of you, as if to say, what if this was real? What if this wasn't? And just, yeah. So the final stage of the piece is you take off the helmet and you come back to reality, and, like any good dream, it's embedded within you more questions.
I like your reaction. And just, because it is kind of mind blowing. The very first time I put on my Oculus and watched it, my brain literally was like, what is going on? What's happening? And it was kind of uncomfortable at first because I just am not used to consuming content that way. So when I watched it the second time, it was like my brain goes, oh, I've been here. Okay, let me settle in and really enjoy it. Every single time I watched it since, I find new things. And my brain is oh, let's check out over here. Let's look over here. What happened up here? And I continue to find new elements, almost like Easter eggs that keep popping up. You had mentioned the key floating. I didn't notice that before until you mentioned it on this show. So that's what's fascinating to me, is not only the dimensionality of and feeling like you're right in it. By the way, when she has your arms, your hands or wrists tied, and she starts pulling you into it, that really blew my mind, because it felt like you were there and your body was moving even as you were just standing still watching it. It was very, very cool. So it's you have this, I guess, like you said, threshold that you pass through once you put the headset on. And then you have almost a second threshold when you fire it up and takes you into this world. And then you have this departing threshold when you take it off and you get back to reality, and your brain kind of goes, wow, what in the world was that?
Yeah, I think a lot of my virtual reality that I'm designing is about going through these thresholds, going through and navigating these different sub-realities within the reality. This entire piece, you're traveling through different versions of this dream, different layers. Everything is thematically and tonally similar, but it's exploring the concepts a little bit differently. And, the song is called Money. And so the piece itself is something of an exploration inside the virtual, inside illusion. And the idea is that as you come out of virtual reality and you kind of might question your own reality, and you might say, okay, what was the reality of this piece? And you take off that helmet and you go, well, what is the reality that I'm living in? What is the reality of this wild thing that's called money that has come to dominate, the politics of the world? And again, it's just ideas. A lot of this film is meant to be like a dream. It's meant to act on the lower chakras, to be felt inside the gut, to be felt inside the root chakra, and to stir up questions in the higher mind.
Wow. Well, what's next, Parker? What did you learn in all this? What is, from a storytelling standpoint, filmmaking storytelling standpoint, did you learn from this, and how will that inform your next production?
Well, the first easiest thing to look at is it's just, the 100 or so different processes and tools that we created in order to make this. It's really exciting knowing going into the next one that I've already got those in the tool belt. I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I can do those things, all the digital steps, knowing that we can work inside this helmet camera to put it into words that someone can understand. It's, I don't know. It's hard to get down into the nitty gritty of all the tools and processes, but But the tools and processes aside, it doesn't ultimately come down to telling a really good story. Yeah, it does come down to telling a good story. And as far as the storytelling and the grammar of it goes, it's good to know that you can travel through these different states. You can go from a first person to a third person and back without making people uncomfortable. It's good to know that you can change the orientation and view. And as long as you are very conscious about guiding the focus of the viewer, you can make something that's digestible. So I want to do so many different things inside this medium. I want to tell so many different stories, take people to different worlds. I think the next level is to bring more and more agency into this world. It's cool right now. You're inside virtual reality and a lot of things are happening to you, but to go in and take the cinematic work and take it into the gaming engines and allow you interactivity, allow you control, allow your decisions that you make inside this universe to help shape that universe. I mean, ultimately, that's where it's all going. We're working up to building virtual realities that are so seamless, that are so high definition, that touch people in ways beyond sight and sound, touch people, physically and smell and taste. We're really working on a technology that's leading up to building realities that are indistinguishable from reality. And at that point, you have to ask yourself, is it even virtual?
Oh, that plays right off of Ready Player One, this recent Spielberg movie out where it certainly crossed that line. Well, Parker, thank you so much for being here today and sharing your insights and your exploration in virtual reality that you've come about in a very quick amount of time. And now to have one of your first big pieces premiere on Red Bull Media is pretty cool. So thanks for sharing all of your insight and your hard work with us today on Business's Story.
Thanks so much, Dad. Thanks for having me on, and thanks for, raising me and help giving me the tools to be able to do this stuff and be able to be a creative force in the world. And yeah, it all started with you and Mom. So thank you so much.
You've come a long way from creating those little stop action Lego movies you started making back in the third grade or whenever it was.
Yeah, the stop action Lego movies. That was the beginning of the technological storytelling. Yeah. Yeah. Going from like 0 dimension to 3D. So that's pretty cool. Well, thank you. And thank you all for listening to this edition of the Business's Story. If you like what you heard today, feel free to share this episode with a friend, a family member, a colleague, or someone who's also interested in where the VR world is going. Just love to have you reach out to your folks and let them know about Business's Story and these kinds of shows that we're doing here. And of course, if I can be of service to you, visit me over at businessesstory.com, where I have a ton of different tools, other shows for you, lots of blog posts that talk about how you can craft and tell compelling stories that sell in the virtual world as well as the virtual reality world. Until next week, and when we'll have another amazing storyteller on like Parker, I want you to remember that the most potent story you are ever going to tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks for listening.